This is Andy Braitman again from Braitman Studio and Cheap Joe's, and we're going to do something you should never do. This is, this is all wax, it's all covered with wax. This is a powdered gold pigment, and it's, if you get it in the air, you don't want to breathe it. But there's some really cool things. So I'm going to hold this away from this and get this wax wet again. Because of course if I blew that on this, it would get in the air and we'd breathe it all. So I'm going to take an area of this that's particularly gray looking, and I'm going to get it re-emulsified. And I'm going to ask my assistant to come over here. Jessica, would you mind? Now don't breathe in, Jessica. You have to hold your breath the whole time. No, you'll be fine. Just keep it on this area for me a second. Okay, you can move it now. I'm going to blow. I'm going to put this back. Thank you. And that's done. That will stay like that. That's a finished piece. That's finished. That'll stay like that forever. It's held by the wax. It's got this beautiful surface to it. If I want to break it up a little bit, I can re-emulsify it and put some material into that. I can cut into it. I'm heating my tool up here. I can cut into it and remove a section of that. So we can see it and I can place it somewhere else. Now since that powdered pigment is already held into suspension with the wax, I don't have to worry about re-emulsifying it. I can just put it back down. And I can start to pick this up and move it around as I need it. And then I want to make certain that it's all fused. I'm going to heat that up and fuse it. And I'll work this whole area just like that. And it's a beautiful surface, and the metallics are the only pigment that catches the surface and glows like that. There's no other surface that'll do that. We've got a bronze, you've got a gold, you've got a copper. They're really beautiful surfaces, but it's dangerous. You're getting this particulate matter, you're blowing it in the air, you don't want to do that, but boy, it just makes some beautiful surfaces if you like that look. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come on top of this with a Dorland's cold wax medium, a large brush, and start to control the world that we've created here. Because right now it's just an abstract piece, but there was going to be a boat here. And this is what's nice about this. So this is a regular painting. This is oil paint with a resin gel medium. I've got a boat. I'm going to restructure this boat on this side. That's going to be a shadowed side to the boat. Bring it down into the water. There's going to be some sunlight hitting here. There's a little bit of a pole. I'm not sure what's going on. I guess the water continues up. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to re-emulsify and paint this. So I've got, this is a Dorland's cold wax medium, and it is the consistency, look, and texture of lard. It's disgusting. It is a fun disgusting. But it's a wax medium just like what we're using here. So I'm able to take the paint that I've mixed up. I'll put a little ultramarine blue in there too. And the percentage of wax to paint is a really interesting question. The more wax you have, the more brittle the surface becomes. The more paint you have, the more pliable it becomes. If you're working on a rigid surface, that's not as big a deal. If you're working on a flexible surface like a canvas, this becomes a real problem. So in this case, I've put a lot of wax in here, and I'm able to come back on top. I'll mix it with some white to lighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to take a regular oil painting brush, and I'm going to come across this surface with this material, and I want you to see what happens. This is just paint right on top of the wax. Pick up some of that loose stuff. And this is just that cold wax medium. And I'm going to use it to integrate my way into this surface a little bit. Catch some of the highlights, kill some of the white of that gesso board coming through. Cover up some of that gold. Now this is the Dorlands again with a concoction. It's a kind of a misty blue green. I want to get that dirty look of, you know, like sunlight through dirty water. So I'm going to play with that. And again, that's just the cold wax medium and oil paint. And that's Dorland's. I'm going to be much more parsimonious with the amount of this I put down because I don't want to create too much of a color game going on. I will put that in behind here completely though. So I have still a tendency to go from one color to another color. Now, this is all fairly ready to play with, but since that wax is hard underneath and the paint is soft on back with one of these tools and start to score in and make some marks. And that's just a device that's letting me mix color without actually, and you can use, that's actually a tool that'll let me put it down as well. Now watch what happens when I heat it up and the paint underneath it begins to soften. The oil paint, look at this. This is just, it starts to fill the void. If I let the paint, the gun sit in one area longer, it liquefies, makes that area soft and solid. I can let the air pressure join one group to another group. When it's soft, I can come back and reveal some of the stuff that's underneath it. Liquefy it. I can take some of the paint. Okay, the only part that's bothering me right now is this area that's raised, and I'm not sure what to do with it. So I'm going to lift it and remove it and let the surrounding paint liquefy and fill the area. See how it flows into that void? Real natural shape, that's what I'm looking for. Now, on that initial pour, I have these areas of wax that I'm now revealing, and they're moving. It's like ice. It's moving and clarifying and cleaning up areas so that as this becomes flatter and becomes more homogeneous across the surface, I'm letting the medium itself act as the device that helps re-liquefy the area and flatten it out. And you can see how the pigment comes in around the edges and begins to make these beautiful forms and surfaces. I really like the idea of some geometry being carved into these areas. So I have no problem with just making little hard edge marks, maybe even lifting an area out, and then liquefying across that edge. And I may take this. That's a nice little gun. And they take this and just put it in over here. And as long as everything's wet, that'll stay just like that. Now at this point, while it's wet, I'm going to carve in the shape of the boat. And that'll help justify all of this. I'm going to have some kind of a boat up here. I'm going to have the sun coming from this side and this side be shadowed. So I may come back with regular paint and Dorland's cold wax medium to mix and paint with this a little bit more. But in the meantime, I'm going to let this cool off and dry. It should just take a second. I'll turn this off and look at what we've got. I'll turn it around so you can see it. And what I'm going to do is, by putting a boat placement here and have this nice strong reflection, I'll justify all this abstract shape with just enough reality here to give it context and form. So the next thing I'll do is I'll let this set up, mix up some oil paints, come back on top and shape the boat. And this should be a fairly finished piece in a very short order of time. And the idea is, again, to make these surfaces lustrous and magical. And I'll come back and play for hours. But right now I'm just gonna pick up and reveal. And this is the fun part. You know, everything's still kind of wet, but it's not so wet that it creates a problem. So I can pick up areas that bother me. Like you can see, this is all looking pretty good. I lifted that area because it looked gray. This is an area that looks a little non-committal right here. I'm not quite sure what's happening. So I'll take this section out. I'll cut the edges cleanly. I'll take the knife and just lift it up. And I'll just move it adjacent to that, just a spot. So I've got that little edge there. I'm going to leave the geometry carved in. When I reheat this, I may melt those lines down. I may leave the lines in. I'm not really sure. I love that little area. Let me lift it up and put it somewhere else so it can be seen. And this is the part of the game that I'm doing now because everything is still pretty wet. And it lets me play across an edge. And that's coming right back down to that original gesso board. And I'm just going to pop that in over here. And since the reflection is coming this way, I'm going to make certain that I have enough interest leading us in that direction, which means I need a nice dark back here as well. This light's a little self-contained, so I'll lift that up. And take that right to the bottom edge. Okay, while this is still fairly wet, so I don't have to work too hard, I'm going to do a quick heat and then we'll take a break. And all I'm doing is fusing the edges of those shapes that I cut out to the surface. Isn't that beautiful? That geometry I cut out, I want to leave residue of, but I don't want to make it look like it was too deliberate. So in some areas I can hide it. If I get this liquid enough, it'll spill into those cutout areas, but not fill them completely. That's pretty just the way it is. Okay, I think everything's fairly well joined. Let's take a little break while I mix up some paint. We'll come back on top.